Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, everyone. Thank you for joining us today. Today we have a webinar by AVIV Group about seller leads, the next big revenue generator for real estate marketplaces. And this webinar is sponsored by Frisbee. So today we're going to have a short presentation by our sponsor first, and we'll jump straight into the main content, followed up by a short presentation or a brief spot by Frisbee, and Q&A session at the end where you'll have the opportunity to ask all your questions, and we'll do our best to answer them. So I would like to quickly play a video by our sponsor. Great. And now please welcome Angela Hawksworth, our APAC director, joined us all the way from Australia to tell us about seller leads and what they mean for marketplaces as an opportunity for revenue and further growth. The stage is yours, Angela.
Okay, thank you, Konstantin, for that introduction. So I'm going to talk to you about seller leads and why we think they are the next big revenue generator for real estate marketplaces. First, I'll just take you through our agenda. So we're going to look at the journey that properties take to get to the transaction. We'll also look at the products that marketplaces sort of need to build to enable and to generate seller leads. We'll look at business models and the processes of qualifying leads. And then finally, we'll take a look at the size of the revenue opportunity. So what's the current journey a property takes to get to the transaction? Well, it begins with attracting sellers. So once you attract a seller, you need to turn that seller into a lead and then convert that into a mandate and then market that listing or that property and then ultimately close the transaction. Historically, real estate marketplaces have kind of played in the last two parts of this process, but predominantly around marketing listings. And today we're going to talk about the first three phases of this journey. So why are we going to talk about seller leads? Well, because if you want to get into the transaction, if you want to enable transactions or play in this part of the real estate journey, you need to own the whole process. So that means you need to start at the very beginning, ultimately, and that starts with leads. So a main question, I guess, that marketplaces have is whether they should build or buy one of these businesses. Obviously, AVIV Group acquired My Agent in France in 2019. And Scout24 acquired Movakauf in 2020. And then in Australia, REA Group is building their own seller leads or seller-focused portal using a real estate property site that they've had for a while. So the trend has tended to be that if you are going to change or move into a new business model. So in this case, My Agent and Movakauf are commission sharing businesses, whereas REA Group is offering a subscription business. The trend has tended to be that these businesses are acquired rather than built from scratch. So the first phase of this journey is attracting sellers. And so there are two primary ways that starts. The first is, valuing a property or a property estimate. The other option is an agent search or selecting an agent. We don't actually think that they're mutually exclusive. We think you can offer them both, and most services do. It's just that it's once you get to the valuation phase or the property estimate phase that it actually turns into a seller lead. So another question, do you need to operate a standalone site, or can this be part of your existing real estate marketplace? Obviously, in France, again, My Agent is a standalone site, but it was already a standalone business. It has a good brand. However, when AVIV Group has gone to roll this business out into other markets, in particular in Germany, they've integrated the platform into their real estate marketplace there, Immowelt. So the main question really is not so much does it need to be a standalone or on portal or on your marketplace, but rather, you know, do agents and owners trust your property data and your estimates? And we hope that the answer is yes, obviously. So there are two main models for this business. The first is a cost per lead or a charge per lead. That's what Scout is doing in Germany, and they have done for a while. You know, in 2021, they generated over 100,000 leads, and the average revenue was about 210 euro per lead. Now, some of them were less expensive, and some of them were much more expensive, but on average, they're around 210 euro. However, Immoverkauf is a completely different business model. It's a commission sharing model. And so from 1,500 transactions, and that's the key word there, transactions, they generated on average about 7,200 euro. So it's a substantially higher revenue opportunity. And that's because they are taking 40% of the agent's commission, but they don't get paid until the property actually transacts. So that can be as much as 18 months into the future. So in order to do commission sharing and to operate a commission sharing business, you need to be able to qualify leads, and you need to qualify them well. So that's what we're going to kind of look at now. It's worth noting that agents are actually pretty good, or very good, in fact, at converting proposals into mandates. So a proposal is, you know, once the agent has gone to view a property and given an appraisal in person, and they give it a written proposal, they're very good at converting those into mandates, and they're very good at converting those into sales as well. So this data comes from France, from a company called Imopinion, but they surveyed some agents and found that 52% of proposals end up in sales, in transactions in France. So agents are very good at doing this part of the transaction. Where they've had trouble historically, and it's not just in France, it's everywhere, is qualifying leads. That's the hardest sort of and most time-consuming part. So this is the part that these services need to do really well. So this is a deep qualification process. It involves humans, it involves phone calls. Unfortunately, there's no digital solution that's come to replace this. It really is kind of taking or replacing what an agent would do if they were going to do this part of the qualification process. That means that you need to ask lots of questions that agents would ask. You need to understand the seller's situation and kind of tease out, I suppose, their reasons for selling, because that'll help you to understand their motivations for selling, and also how quickly and likely they are to sell. And that helps you assign sort of, and to understand how hot that lead is. But importantly, you know, this isn't a hard sale. So while you are trying to generate a lead for an agent, you're also positioning yourself as an advisor to the seller. Your role is kind of to get them to a place where they feel comfortable speaking to an agent. So, you know, we spoke to one company, My Agent in particular. They told us that, you know, real estate experience is not as important when they're hiring their team, but the fact that these are people that can really take the sellers kind of on this journey and get them to the point where they're ready to speak to an agent. So it's really crucial that you can kind of get them primed and ready to speak to agents. So this is a very human-led business, and a very human-led process. So once you get the seller to the point where you can refer them to agents, there are some processes that the marketplace should have to enable and to help agents to manage those leads more efficiently. So one part is that the agents know that they're competing with each other, and the seller is referred to up to 3 agents, and the seller knows who those agents are. So they'll know their names, they'll have their contact information, and they'll be told that they'll have expect a call from the agent within the next 48 hours. Then the marketplace or the lead generation service will brief the agent about that call that they had with the seller to help them to understand the seller's situation. So that basically when the agent calls the seller, the seller doesn't have to repeat themselves over again. So it actually elevates that conversation from a place of understanding what the seller's needs are to helping that seller understand why that agent is the best person to sell their property. At this point, the marketplace usually and should sort of follow up with the seller to make sure that the agent has contacted them, that they contacted them when they said they would. They use different services use a number of different of methods to do this, usually text messages or emails, but we actually think that it's probably better to track the agent calls, to use some kind of tracking service or tracking software, so that they're not relying on the seller to tell them that they haven't heard from an agent, for example. They can proactively contact the agent again to say, you haven't contacted the seller, you have X amount of time to do it. So probably our friends at FreeSpeak can probably talk you through some of the things that they do in that area. Finally, at some point in this process, the marketplace will call the seller just to find out how the experience went for them. So, was it good? Was it bad? Did they list their property with one of the agents they were recommended? And did the property ultimately transact? And that's important as well for kind of proving attribution later on, that they can say to the agent, well, we know that you sold this property because we passed you the lead and the seller said that you did. Some other ways of ensuring that agents handle leads efficiently is to charge a subscription. So we know that there are some services that both take a share of the commission. It's not usually around the 40% level. It's more like 20% or 20 or 30%, but they also charge an ongoing subscription. And the kind of the method to that is that if you're getting a lead that's free, you might not always follow up on it if you're busy or you don't need to. But if you're paying a subscription, you're more likely to follow up on those leads to ensure you're kind of getting a return on investment there as well if you're the agent. And finally, the important part is to really make sure that you're working with the best agents to ensure that they are delivering a kind of experience that the seller that you're promising to the seller, and that they're meeting a standard that you set. So it's important to sort of always to always ensure that those agents are meeting that standard and dealing with the problems as they arise. That may mean removing some agents from the program. So now, if you're operating a commission sharing model and you don't get paid until the agent gets paid, and the agent doesn't get paid until the property transacts, then there are some things we think you can probably do to help those agents operate their businesses more efficiently. REA Group in Australia, for example, they have a suite of agent tools. So does their rival Domain, for what it's worth. So they offer tools to help agents develop or generate proposals. I mean, historically, agents used to use Microsoft Word. It wasn't very good. So they've also got tools that help them with market analysis. Again, historically, agents typically relied on data that they either bought from somewhere else or that was mostly sort of internal sales data specific to their agency or their office. So this kind of provides them with more granular and certainly more, casts a wider net in terms of local market data that they can use to talk to sellers about the real estate market. They also offer digital contracts, and because it's a seller paid advertising market, they offer a payment solution so that sellers can essentially buy now and pay later for their property marketing. So we think that if you're not getting paid until a property transacts, then it's kind of in your best interest to help agents to work more efficiently and offer these sorts of tools. So now I mentioned REA Group before, and that they're building their own seller leads portal or seller focused portal. They're actually taking, they're sort of targeting a step before the attract sellers phase, and they're looking to enable sellers or unlock unconfident sellers. So they have some research that found, 1.3 million Australians think about selling each year, but more than 60% of them don't take any action. So they believe that the main reason for that is that the seller doesn't have the confidence, or the homeowner doesn't have the confidence to sell. They either don't understand the market well enough, or they don't, they feel that they don't have enough information about their property to speak to an agent. So REA Group think that if they can activate around 1% of these unconfident sellers, that they can generate an additional 8,000 completely new listings for their marketplace. And also that's 8,000 leads to agents that they wouldn't otherwise get. So that's quite, it's about 4% or just over 4% of their current listing volumes. So they've relaunched property.com.au. This was a real estate website they acquired many years ago. It's sort of not been doing much, just mirrored their main site, and they've relaunched it as a research site. They've mapped out almost every property in Australia. There's about 15 million addresses there, and they've enhanced all of the listings on this research site with property data. Of course, there are other reasons why people don't ultimately go ahead with selling. Often that's due to financial constraints. It might be that they need to buy before they sell, they're trying to buy and sell at the same time, or they need to sell at a particular time for a particular price. So this is what a listing on property.com.au looks like. As you can see, it looks a lot like a buy or a for sale listing. The only difference is that there's a green button that says thinking of selling. That's the call to action there. And now, as I said earlier, they're operating a subscription model. So this isn't a cost per lead, and it's not a commission sharing model. So they're monetizing listings in additional ways. So one of them is to help people, address those pain points I mentioned before. So they've partnered with a fintech to offer basically bridge loans or bridging finance to help people buy before they sell. They've got a provider to help people borrow the amount of money they need for a deposit before their existing property closes or finalizes the sale. And they've also got this kind of asset light power buying option for people who are looking to essentially sell at a particular time for a particular price. So while they're only charging agent subscriptions, they've found other ways to monetize some of these seller leads as they come in, and certainly as they convert them. So we're going to jump back to the commission sharing model. We're just going to look at the long-term revenue opportunity. So we're taking a look at Imovacauf here. Currently, they occupy about 0.4% of the market. And so with 1,500 transactions, they've generated 10 million or just over 10 million euro. We think that, in the next several years, that there's no reason to think that they couldn't achieve 10% share of the market. I mean, for what it's worth, they've not ever said that that's what they're targeting, but we think that that's certainly possible. It's worth considering that Germany and France as well is a market where there's a high level of transactions. I think it's over 40% of transactions occur without an agent. So they're just essentially C2C real estate transactions. So that actually makes these services, these businesses, this value proposition really valuable to agents. So we have no reason to think that, that they can't easily generate 37 or 38,000 transactions and convert them into leads. So before I go back to Konstantin, I'll just kind of conclude with some insights here. So we obviously think that capturing seller leads is kind of a no-brainer. If you're a real estate marketplace and you're trying to get into the transaction or enable transactions, you need to own this whole process, and you certainly need to start at the beginning, and that's by capturing seller leads. We think also that commission sharing obviously offers the best revenue potential, but we don't think that there's no room to also operate a cost per lead business like Scout is currently doing. We think, in fact, that it will continue with a hybrid approach where you offer a service where agents just pay for a lead and they're happy to nurture it and turn it into and qualify that lead and turn it into a sale themselves, where there'll be agents where that's not what they're after, and they do want an already qualified, very hot lead that they can quickly turn into a mandate. So that's pretty much all from me. I'll pass you back to Konstantin now.
Thank you, Angela. We will have Q&A session at the end of the webinar. So now is a good time to type your questions both to Angela and to Frisbee, who's up next to talk about their experience in helping marketplaces manage some parts of this process. So I would like to welcome Tanguy Talon from Frisbee, VP Marketplaces. Tanguy, the stage is yours.
Thank you. Hi, everyone. And first, thanks a lot, Angela, for this presentation. Really enjoyed it, especially the process part, because you're fully right. There's a lot of things we can do there. So I'm Tanguy Talon. I'm in charge of marketplaces within Frisbee, and very briefly, our job is to generate better sales conversation. And I think it resonates a lot with the human process you mentioned. Yes, going through this process, there's a lot of human interactions, and this is what we do. We make sure that these interactions can happen easily, safely, and more efficiently. And I would like to share with you a few technical tips on how to improve the process. Just going through the process, but as you already did, I'm gonna go very quickly. But we know that when a seller lead is landing to your platform, there's the intention, like go through the agent directory. Then there is self-qualification when the lead is going to go through the valuation form. There's potentially qualification phase where you as a platform are going to call the lead and understand everything. And then you transfer that to the agent or several agents, and you expect them to jump back on the lead, have a proper validation, book a viewing, mandate, and have the deal done. So again, the idea is to share with you 3 tips. There's many more, but the goal is to be quite concise right now. 3 tips or tech on how to optimize this flow. And I want to specifically zoom on this transfer to the agent, because we know it's a critical part here. First one, and Angela, you very clearly mentioned it, it's essential to get visibility over the agent follow-up. Basically, you're going to share this lead. These leads are extremely valuable for the agents. Nevertheless, you would be surprised by the number of agents not calling back in the next 12 hours, for instance. So you need to know that. You need to have visibility of that. You need to track this call and to have certainty to know who are the agents calling back, but who are the most reactive, who are the agents having long discussion with the lead. And so you can basically select the most reactive agent. You can optimize the process on your end. You can also better prove the value to the agent at the end of the day. And there's many easy ways to do so. There's even way where you can, if you are qualifying yourself, the lead with your own team, you could transfer the lead directly to the agent and keep tracking the entire conversation and making sure that the connection is meaningful. So this is a point number 1. The point number 2 is about facilitating the connection. So it's good for you to have visibility, but you can go beyond that. First one typically would be a gentle reminder to the agent, or less gentle. It depends on the relationship you have with them. But basically, if you know that they've not picked up an answer or called back the lead, you can remind them. But most of all, you can also bring value to the agent, because we know that most of them are still going to reach back as soon as possible the lead, but the lead has a job, a family, many things to do. So most probably the leads might not pick up the phone. This is when you can send, for instance, an SMS on behalf of the agent saying, hey, we really value your property. We would love to discuss that with you. When would be a good time for you? And you can even suggest like schedule a callback, and you make life easier and job easier for the agent. And you also make sure that the lead is properly attended. And the third one is, it's important for you to know what's happening beyond that. And as we've seen from the metrics, like once there's a viewing, there's a very high chance of a deal. So you would love to know that. There's one easy option is like, if you detect that there's a meaningful callback between the agent and the lead, you could, for instance, send an SMS and automatize this and the survey, via SMS to the lead, maybe via SMS or email to the agent, where you can start asking and try to understand a bit more what's happening beyond the conversation. So 3 tips connected to this transfer: get visibility over the callback, facilitate the connection, follow the process. There's many more things we could discuss. I'm thinking about all the qualification process and etc. But for now, it was the 3 ideas I wanted to share with you. And now I will give the stage back to Konstantin, because I can see that there's a couple of questions, and I'd be more than happy to deep dive in any of the questions you might have connected to this piece. Thanks a lot.
Thank you, Tanguy. Thank you very much. Hopefully, with your presentation, you answered some of the questions that were submitted. But if you have questions specifically about Tanguy's presentation, please also submit them now as we move on to Q&A.